All right, Chris, we're back for another episode of the Bully Pulpit. As you can tell, my voice has been suffering from South by Southwest activities here. I finally got a little bit of sleep. It's been fun. We hosted a fantasy and esports summit with South by Southwest here. A lot of fun. One of the guys on the panel is the director of government affairs at Prize Picks. And he is also a city councilman at a town here very close to where I am. So I knew him before. And so we kind of started to combine the political and the betting in one person. So, yeah, we can touch base on that. But other than that, I missed you last week. I did not do as good of a job. There was so much to talk about last week that I wanted to run by you because the news has been so thick. So we can jump in. I'm Justin Schoenfelder, the CEO and founder of Fantasy Elect. We are bringing the fantasy sports experience to politics, allowing you to choose over under on your favorite politicians. And you are?
I am interrupting you. I am Chris Matola, and Republican political consultant for about 40 years, and excited to be here and talk about over under and politics in general.
Excellent. Can we start off with something that isn't serious, but I just heard it. I was just listening to a news story about it, and it's the most entertaining, I think, which is the Kristi Noem story for her teeth, her advertisement for her teeth. Have you seen this story?
No. Okay. It's too early. Is it too early to start drinking? No,
you're definitely gonna want to have this with a cocktail. Pour some whiskey in your coffee because it is an exasperating story. So Kristi Noem, I saw it on Twitter. I don't know if that was the original place that she posted it. It is a 5-minute infomercial, basically, for a cosmetic dentistry practice outside of Houston, Texas, called Smile, Texas, where she got work done. And she is basically doing this infomercial for the dentistry practice. And she seems to be facing a potential, a consumer protection lawsuit now because she did not list that it was an advertisement.
Right.
Same thing that has happened to the Kardashians and some others. If they're supposed to let you know if it's an advertisement.
Right.
And it looks like some people in her own state are now looking at did she receive compensation? Did she get the dental work for free? So was it in kind compensation or did she get actual monetary compensation? So what's your take on this? Does this up her chance? I mean, better teeth probably helps her chances to be VP. A negative news story like this, does this help or hurt her to become VP? Because I think all of this has to do with that question.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many threads to pull on that I could spend an hour going down this rabbit hole. So first, so we've hit a culture where, if you go back to the late 70s, early 1980s, there were reporters who would sneak into Ronald Reagan's barbershop where he got his hair cut, trying to get locks of his hair and do lab analyses that they were hair dyed. And it turns out it wasn't. He just had, just preternaturally, thick, dark hair into an old age.
Right.
And so now, you've got politicians that are advertising their cosmetic appeal, which is kind of insane. And people get stuff done all the time. I mean, holy shit. I mean, if Joe Biden has another facelift, he's going to have a goatee. His face,
I didn't expect you to say that.
Yeah. I mean, his face is so Botox now. And again, it's not a bad thing, but you don't advertise it just because it's unseemly. And it doesn't help you. And ultimately it doesn't help you get any votes. It doesn't help you raise any money. Being an attractive candidate, looking healthy, having, white teeth and and a nice smile helps you personally, but like saying, "Oh, this is all fake," has never helped anybody anywhere. Number two, the lack of discipline. I'll use the word discipline, that you would go and possibly get something for free, or a quid pro quo, or kind of an Instagram influencer thing, and not fully disclose it with whatever regulations that you have to live under, is fucking insane. I mean, I've been out with elected officials that simply, they were purely social and were having coffee or grabbing a lunch, like grabbing a cheeseburger, bull feathers, and a beer at lunch, or after dinner, and the check is like, for both of us, like $40, with tip, and I'll say, I pick it up, and they're like, no, I can't, and they got to pay for it and split it in two checks, because that's the rule, and disregarding that kind of hurts you in a petty way, because voters instinctually understand that if you don't care about the small shit, you're not going to care about the big shit either. There was the
Can
famous. Yeah, go.
I was just going to say, can I tell you what I actually think is the stupidest part of this whole story? And the reason that even if I was inclined to vote for Noem, I would not, because it's just too stupid. Why didn't she go to a cosmetic dentist in her state and publicize them?
Yeah.
Nobody would have given a shit politically if she had done that. She'd be like, oh, yeah, you're right. Maybe I should have. But you know what? My state this is the best dentist in my state. Like, my state does the best dental work. We are giving jobs, blah, blah, blah. It was so stupid to publicize a small business in a different state. To me, that is the most politically ignorant thing that she did in this whole thing, was because it's the most basic.
Yeah. I by the way, I would put, since we're in the wagering business, I would wager heavily that where this came from is that she was meeting with a fundraiser or some kind of a bundler or somebody in Texas, and they said, oh, this is great, we like you, but you should do something about your teeth. I know a guy, and he'll do it for free, and he's the best guy ever, and da-da-da-da-da. And they went, okay. But again, I mean, the whole thing is kind of insane. And again, it's unseemly, but to kind of go where I was kind of going about, if you don't care about the little things, you won't care about the big things. There was a famous story, and I'm going to get one is Winston Churchill, and I always want to say the other one's Lady Astor, but it's not. But they're at dinner, and Churchill, says, would you sleep with me? And she says no, and he said, would you sleep with me for £1 million? And she says, well, maybe. He said, would you sleep with me for tuppence? And she goes, of course not. She goes, what kind of person do you think I am? He said, we've established that. We're negotiating on price.
That's funny.
But the other thing, by the way, to go to her bigger problem, is that she is allegedly had an affair and is under the guidance of Corey Lewandowski, who was an earlier Trump guy who's been, essentially frozen out of the campaign by the professionals this time. And so I think what really kind of would hurt her more than her fake teeth or her cosmetically enhanced teeth is her relationship with him, because nobody wants bad people on the inside.
I believe they actually even came out and acknowledged that they had an affair, didn't they? I mean, I think it's not even alleged anymore. I think they both admitted to it now.
Yeah,
which, by the way, when you have to admit to something, I feel like how you admit to it is really important as well, right? So they were really behind that story, I got to say. Like, it took on legs and before they came out and admitted to it. Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you. I first of all, I don't think she's going to be the VP nominee. I don't think that she's really on that short list anymore.
Yeah.
I think I don't really have. I mean, I have many issues, but I have such low expectations of politicians that, to me, quid pro quo, and you're gonna shill some sort of bullshit cosmetic dentistry thing. I mean, it seems to me to go. I think the Churchill story that you gave is a very good one. I've said multiple times now that, as an example, if you think like back in the day, movie stars they did not do commercials. Like for them to do commercials, it had to be a very specific reason. Like if you are a real movie star, like Tom Cruise never did a commercial in the US. Now they would fly to Japan and they would do some certain commercials there, right? That was the shtick. But now you see modern movie stars shilling anything that somebody will come to them, whether it's a MasterCard or a Rolex or some new fragrance at the Dior store, right? Mm-hmm. And the thing I've told friends of mine is like, everyone is whoring themselves out now. There's no like integrity of my work. There's none of this. There's none of this. It's like, how do I capitalize on all of this? Yeah. So for a politician to be in on that game, it doesn't shock me at all, right? The thing that to me is almost offensive is that she didn't do it with someone from her own state. Like, to me, that was like, if you are going to do it, just do it in a politically wise way that actually benefits you among your electorate. You know what I mean? That's why I'm kind of like, it's much ado about nothing. It's just more of the current de-evolution of where we are, right? Like, we're devolving.
Yeah, it's just dumb. Yeah, it's dumb. And, if you don't, it's dumb, and we're getting progressively dumber. There was a wonderful Matt Taibbi, who used to be with Rolling Stone and now is an independent journalist, a very good Substack. He had a essay in his newsletter, I think yesterday or the day before, and basically it was about an article in New York Magazine. But basically he said, when did we start just automatically accepting crazy bullshit? Right. He said,
exactly.
And it's great. I mean, and that's really kind of succinctly put. And it's like,
now, let me ask you a question. Yeah. So to expand on this a bit further, there's another thing that I was looking at today. So how does this relate to, let's just look within the Republican Party, right? Kristi Noem is a Republican. Now, Ken Buck has announced that he's going to leave Congress within a matter of days or weeks, right? Like, I was reading a story about, there's currently the Republican conference is having their meeting at Whitebriar or Briarcliff or whatever it's called in West Virginia, right? And Ken Buck comes out. I mean, truthfully, the ads for Democrats to run now are all coming from Republicans. The shit that Ken Buck has said about his own party is crazy. The stuff that Chip Roy is saying about his own party is crazy. And they have an anonymous quote from a congressman saying about why he didn't go. I think something like 40% of the conference did not go to West Virginia. He said, "I'd rather eat my own liver with Hannibal Lecter." I was like, what a statement that within the conference, they hate each other so much. There's such rancor and division. And is it because it's not ideological? Is it because that part of the conference, part of the party, and this is true on both sides, I think, is I want to get my teeth done and be a talking head on Fox News, or I want to be a political influencer. And the other side is I want to get shit done. I want to compromise and move the country forward. I have a vision. You know what I mean? Is that the difference, or am I maybe overestimating that?
No, actually, I think you've hit it on the head. There are a number of people that run for Congress because they want to do good things, and you may not agree with what they consider good things, but there is an altruism there, and they're serious people. There is, I think, a growing and larger swath of elected officials who absolutely hate their jobs, but they like being a celebrity. I think that Nancy Mace, Republican, she absolutely hates her job, loves being a celebrity. AOC, not to pick on her, loves being a celebrity, doesn't particularly like her job. Because the job of being an elected official, especially a congressperson who's got to run every 2 years, it sucks. I mean, it is not a fun job, and you know, and it is not a powerful job. U.S. Senate, different story. That's actually a fun job. What you really want to be is an ambassador to someplace not warm and unimportant. Like you want to be a, ambassador to like American Samoa or something. Which was Hunter Thompson's famous thing that McGovern won. He was going to be appointed ambassador to American Samoa, but no. So, but it's this, but it's this celebrity thing, and it's all about getting on Fox or MSNBC or wherever the fuck they're going on. And it is the opposite. Just like if you're running a business, if somebody's monopolizing a meeting with their kind of insane bullshit about the coffee, where do we get the coffee from, and what are the pastries, and how come we can't have something hot, as opposed to actually doing the business of the business, I mean, it makes it harder to keep and retain good people. And again, I think there's a whole class of elected officials that like being celebrities. They don't particularly like being legislators. And I think that is, and for people that aren't going to these conference things, yeah, good for them. It used to be when I started out in this business that you would try to get into there because that's where everybody would be, and it would be like a serious thing. And usually there would be a seminar or a piece where you would kind of say, here's what I learned last election cycle and this technique or this spot or this whatever, or this polling. And, but basically it became shit shows and like, when can I get out of here to go golf? I mean, if they wanted to do business, they would go to fucking, Albany, where you're locked in and it's cold and it sucks and you're doing business. I mean, they always do them in nice places where you can go play golf, get a massage, and get a spa treatment. They should have it in why not? In lead South Dakota if they wanted to get shit done.
For sure, makes sense. I mean, the other interesting aspect of that is I was listening to someone once say that who we end up electing, like where they come from, reflects kind of where the country is. So what their point was that prior to, I want to say it was like post-war, World War II. So let's say like post-World War II, we've notoriously hired lawyers, right? We've become more legalistic. We become more like regulatory. We become more administrative state, right? We become more of these things. So because of that, for whatever reason, lawyers seem to be the ones going into the political field and the ones that we would elect, right? And before that, he was saying that it wasn't that way. So like pre-World War II, like pre-war, post-war era, you had a lot of people from industry or from farming. Even like if you go back farther, you would have like this era where it was all agricultural based, right? So 1800s and whatever. And he was saying that Trump was a reflection that we've all become reality TV show society, that our society is a giant reality TV show now. And if you think about it, it's so true, because what is TikTok besides a reality TV show where people are like doing a freaking stupid ass dance, right, and people are just like tapping it and loving it, and just that's all they're doing is scrolling through that, or watching Real Housewives or Kardashians and believing that this shit is real. So that, and that his thesis was that Trump was going to be not the he was not an anomaly, he was an introduction to a new era. That politicians would reflect that reality TV show societal move. So to your point, that is kind of how they're acting, right? Like reality TV show celebrities. They're like the Kardashians or the Real Housewives,
right? Right. And what's interesting about it is that that whole thing is fun. When I say funded, I don't mean directly paid, but the fuel for that is really a handful of cable stations and vendors with really small viewerships. I mean, if you look at the viewership on Fox on any given night, it's a little over, it's like a million, it's under 2 million people. If you look at MSNBC, you're in the hundreds, low hundreds of thousands.
Right.
And this is the show that people are fucking dying, shows people are dying to get on. And, by the way, by comparison, I think CBS Evening News is like 15 million people nightly,
Right.
which is a significant thing. And again, I mean, it's not even like they want to be celebrities on Broadway. They want to be it on fucking cable access. They want to do fucking puppet shows in their basement.
Right.
But that is,
Right.
it's not even like it's not even like a big time thing. By the way, the TikTok.
I feel like that should be the new name of our podcast, Chris, the Marionette Show. That should be.
The TikTok. By the way, the House
great transition
this week, and to get rid of to essentially force China to sell TikTok for $500 billion. And then there were like 50 no votes on it, and almost equally split between Democrats and Republicans. And there were a couple civil libertarians on there, but most of the people on the list were like, yeah, none of you people should be in Congress. But it was kind of an interesting vote. It was interesting how quickly they pushed it through, and it's interesting how much lobbying, TikTok is doing right now. And TikTok, the platform itself, kind of stirring up its users to call Congress and people threatening murder and threatening to kill themselves if you take TikTok off the platform. And again, it'll be interesting if they sell it, what happens to this. I think this is going to tell us a lot about the state of our politics right now. That if you can't,
it's interesting to me. I don't know what. Well, let me ask you: does this get them anything? Okay, I've heard two theories.
Yeah.
The first theory I heard was, I think she's from the Hill morning show. I can't remember the name of the show, but I think she does The Hill, and she said, I don't want to falsely say that it was her, but I believe it was her, that this is a result of the ADL interfering in our elections, because the president of the ADL said that they had a TikTok problem because TikTok was driving a lot of the anti-Israel sentiment. Probably, I haven't seen the statistics, but I certainly wouldn't argue that. It does seem that a lot of shit has been on TikTok against Israel, and that generation has then taken that and been mobilized to, the river to the sea shit.
Yeah.
Is this a move for the ADL or the Jewish lobby, the AIPAC, and for our ally? Is this a move to protect and be isolationist and to be protectionist for Facebook and Instagram? Is this a move to be able to hurt China because they don't allow Google, they don't allow Facebook, right? So, or is it all of the above? It's just beneficial. But what is the political end game? What does this get them? Is this going to make you more likely to vote for somebody who voted to divest TikTok from ByteDance?
No, first, I did not see the Hill thing, but I think it's kind of hysterical that the first thing we're going to do is blame the Jews. That's
true.
It's like the fucking pogroms. It's the Jews. But no, I think that there are significant, national security concerns. That essentially TikTok is a giant data suck to the Chinese government, and it's pretty transparently that. And that is demonstrably a bad thing. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, and also them, you know, we also know that TikTok and all platforms, but TikTok, you know, manipulates its algorithm. So you see certain kinds of content. I mean, the content that a person in China would see is different than the content, you know, a teenager in Long Island would see. And, you know, I get that that's business too, but the idea that you are turning social influence over to uh, a foreign government, a hostile foreign government, I think is patently insane. I mean, people lost their minds when, you know, the Russians spent $150,000 on Facebook in 2015 through 2017, and that was like, you know, the country went into meltdown. And the idea that, you know, there was this TikTok thing, and they're sucking data and you know, essentially doing propaganda, and it's not a concern, I think is insane. And again, you know, the jig will be up whether they take the $500 billion and divest it, or if they let it burn down. If they let it burn down, you know, then it says that they were in the kind of, you know, propaganda espionage role all along. If they don't take the $500, or $500 billion, it, you know, I mean, it will expose them one way or the other. But again, I mean, you know, the data is a concern. I mean, the algorithms are a concern. You know, I think at a certain point, I mean, platforms disappear all the time, and people are, you know, addicted to platforms. But if, you know, nobody's lamenting the loss of their MySpace page, you know.
I don't disagree with any of that. And like I said, personally, I give a shit either way because again, China doesn't allow Google and some of our tech companies in their country. So I would say shut them out of all of it. Fuck it. I don't care. I think it is a bit hypocritical and bullshit of an argument though, because we allow them to own like half of our farmland. Do you know what I mean? It's like, if it's really such an issue, why are they actually assembling all of our shit? Why are all the iPhones being made there? We don't know what kind of listening devices are being packaged in each one of those iPhones through the hardware, right? Like, it just seems to me that everything we have, everything that's sold at Walmart is from fucking China. We've spent, the entire, in my opinion, the entire trickle down economic system was this: move offshore to China, pay nothing in wages, and capture that profit at the top. And I could be incorrect in my assessment of it, but that seems to be when you when you actually talk about globalization, that actually seems to be the playbook, which was go to China, they make shit really cheap, and you can sell a bunch of cheap shit to Americans. That's what I think. That's how I see it. So for now, for TikTok to be like the bee's knees of what needs to be dealt with, like the you know, a clear and present danger to the U.S. It seems like, is it, or are all these other things way more? I think like 90% of the hog farms in South Carolina, Nikki Haley basically sold over to the Chinese. Like they were all disparate, and then there was one company that was going around to all these independent hog farms, buying them. And once they had captured like 80 or 90% of the market, they turned around and they sold the whole thing to China.
Right.
There's a great article about.
Through a VC.
Yeah. It was like a PE, you know, type of play, and but with the sanctioning, by the way, of the politicians in South Carolina. So it's like,
the option being let the hog farmers go under, and you know, I mean it's the old Adam Smith thing that capital will flow to the highest rate of return regardless, and you know, and that is kind of how it works. And what's interesting now is that, I mean, China has been able to build this by manipulating its currency illegally for decades now. You know, the fact is it's cheaper to build things in other places like Vietnam than China, and arguably better quality. You know, and you know, China's economies and is something in a meltdown because it's built on real estate they can't utilize and a stock market that nobody trusts. And so their middle class is kind of getting screwed. And now they realize that the one child policy was, it was a mistake, because now they don't have people enough to support the economy, and they're kind of screwed too.
Yeah.
So
they just have a shit ton of unmarried men.
Yeah, right. It's going to look like Italy. The yeah, I mean, it's like, the famous thing about Italian men, when laws and social mores and laws got liberalized in Italy, Italian men stopped marrying. Why? Because you could live with home and have your mother do your fucking laundry and make great meals, and you could still go out and get laid. Right. And so why would you get married, right? I mean, it's right. Like, it took sex off the table. But I mean, but the history of systems is they tend to collapse in on themselves. So China has all this capital now, but it's kind of like hollowed out because their own economy is in trouble. And so what do they do with hog farms in South Carolina? Well, they sell it. At some point, they're going to sell it to, Mexican drug lords. I mean, that's good. And they'll be, smuggling fentanyl in hog bellies.
Right.
Yeah.
They won't need the avocado farmers anymore.
But I think the TikTok thing, I think that the other thing too, is that I think it comes on the heels of the big hearing they had in DC about the damage that social media does psychologically to young people. And that insane moment where they got Zuckerberg to stand up and apologize to that. If I was Zuckerberg, I would be like, you know what? Fuck you. I mean, honestly,
did you not do that episode with me, Chris? Because I know we talked about this in one. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The irony of Josh Hawley, the epitome of the MAGA, schools are grooming our kids. Parents should be in charge of everything for their own kids. Yet it's your fault that my kid has depression because of. Take the fucking phone away. You're the parent. You know what I mean? Like, both things can't be true at the same time in this case. They can't be true.
And that is, you can literally see the rise of depression and self-esteem issues among younger people when phones are introduced in,
for sure,
like 2010, 2009, 2010. That it's a straight line down. It's really, and it is shocking, and it's,
but I will say this, Chris.
Yeah.
I will say this, Chris, is like the difference with TikTok, by the way, and we've gone down this whole TikTok a bit, but I don't think it's as bad for young people's mental health as Instagram, because TikTok is it's a more performative medium, whereas Instagram, you're posting yourself and people are commenting on, ooh, she looks ugly in that picture, or they don't get a like, or whatever. Instagram, probably more than any platform, has been the thing to really affect kids, in my opinion, because they would post and they would share their life and try to curate their life, and they were doing it for social acceptance. Whereas TikTok doesn't seem to have that same flow when people are on TikTok. They're watching people doing dance, and then they're repeating it, and then they're saying, and somebody might say something shitty on that, sure. Mm-hmm. But it really seems that Instagram was the thing that really messed kids' minds up about that social acceptance depression. I could be wrong, but just the way the apps act differently, it seems that one has had an outsized effect on the mental health of young people.
And I would probably, even as an adult. No, I mean, even as an adult, I mean, I'm on the platforms just because I should be on the platforms. But you see stuff that like enrages you, or is so insane. There was a picture of Margot Robbie, and there was a whole thread a bunch of people did about, like, she's really mid, and I'm like, are you fucking people nuts? That like she's a mid-looking woman.
What does mid mean?
Average.
Oh, mid-looking.
Like mid-looking. She's mid. It's just like, and you gotta go like, what do like, and if you're a 13-year-old girl,
What ugly
yeah,
what ugly fucking Portland wrote she's a mid? This is what
yeah,
I want to
right,
know. Is like, who the
yeah,
fuck wrote that?
yeah. I mean, it's like, but I mean, and so think about that. You're a 13-year-old girl putting something up for
Right,
acceptance, and there's going to be some troll like that that's going to roll in just to,
right,
and again, the stuff. I mean, stuff hurts you, stuff damages you,
right. Sure.
because you kind of you curate your friends, you curate your friends, and you curate your life so you are accepted. That's what people do, and when that
Right.
kind of bubble gets burst, as an adult, it can be distressful, or and so you can't even imagine as a teenager what that must be
Right.
like.
I would also say that this was kind of the argument for the content rules at Twitter that Elon Musk railed against. Like people were saying the same thing, is that hateful language towards people because of certain things can really affect their mental health, and we're not going to allow it on our platform, right? Like, without me even saying whether I agree or disagree with that, I'm just saying I think this also extends to what that argument was that these things are truly hurtful, and it's our platform and we can curate it, and it's against our content policies to be that way, right?
Yeah,
There's certain things
yeah,
that I think it's very hard though in practice, because you're constantly making subjective choices and decisions, and that leads
right.
to your own personal biases having an effect, right?
Yeah, I think where Twitter crossed the line was them. I'll use the word conspiring because they did it in private, conspiring with government officials to censor certain kind of speech that was
Mm,
legitimate. I mean, the when you're censoring Stanford
right,
biologists
right,
about our DNA on vaccines, you because the government wanted you to, you were engaging in censorship and at that. And the same thing with we know the tech platforms right before the election kind of censored the Hunter Biden laptop story. And
right.
in some countries there was actually a 24-hour news blackout or a 48-hour news blackout,
Mm.
that people don't break stories right before elections, which may or may not be a good thing. But again, I think that there is a push and pull on all this stuff, and it gets sorted out. Um,
Right, right.
and again,
Yeah,
it gets
I think it's a
sorted
good
out.
point.
It gets sorted out in an ugly way, but it gets sorted out. I
Yeah.
mean, that's the rationale. That's the laissez-faire rationale, which I will kind of cede to at a certain point, simply because when you see the kind of pinheads that would make that decision, I don't want Donald Trump appointees or Joe Biden appointees to tell me what I can see on social media. And if I happen to see something
I totally
offensive,
agree with you. And
but the idea
I
again,
agree with you. And go ahead, Chris.
no, I'm good. No, I mean, I just,
Yeah, I was just going to say, I agree with
I
you.
uncomfortably default there.
For our product, we are regulated, right? So,
Mhm.
if you're going to play certain ways, you have to be of a certain age and live in a certain place. There's nothing preventing, if the government is truly concerned about mental health, you don't need Mark Zuckerberg to stand up and
Yeah,
apologize. Or Josh Hawley even said, are you going to personally compensate them? Which I thought was awesome.
yeah,
But you don't need that. If you're so goddamn concerned about it, Josh Hawley, make it a regulated market that you can't have social media. You can't be on the platform until you're 18. You're an adult at that point. You make your own decisions. But if you're so concerned about what it's doing to young people, I know it's possible to regulate it and to prevent access to it, because we have that, right? So any app can have its own threshold. So maybe things are really bad, Chris. Maybe things are just horrible. Are they as bad as Katie Britt made them out to be in her response to the State of the Union?
there is the so here's I've seen both the State of the Union and Britt's response after. I don't watch them at the time, and here's my dirty secret: is that I've never watched a response or a State of the Union in my entire political career. And there's a practical reason for it, because if I watch it, I will have an opinion on it. And at its base level, my job is not to consider my opinion, but consider what voters think. And I don't want my prejudice to get in the way of my analysis of what voters think. So I thought both speeches were insane. I thought that, an Adderall-driven Biden screaming about candy bars was fucking nuts. And that, I know it was. And by the way, and Snickers smacked him down almost immediately after, which was funny. About, no, that's not true what you said about our candy bars, which is fucking great. It's hysterical. It's absurd.
Yeah.
And the Brit thing, which was surreal. I mean, it was Alabama, AL.com, which is the Alabama newspaper consortium. If you go on Twitter, if you look them up, they did this great comparison between her State of the Union response and her previous statements. And it's fucking hysterical, because she was a well-regarded chief of staff on the Hill, and and a well-regarded local business leader in Alabama. And you can see why she was effective, because she is, young, attractive, and when you hear her speak, she sounded like an adult. She sounded like somebody you kind of go, this is a chief of staff, this is a business roundtable person, this is that, as opposed to this kind of performative TikTok, Instagram thing that she did, where nobody talks like that fucking ever. I mean, that was the talk when you roll in, 4:00 in the morning, covered with glitter and smelling like taboo perfume, that your wife looks at you, and that's the talk you get. How dare you? I mean, that's the fucking one you get,
Right.
And the idea that she was, and obviously it's an affectation that she was coached into, because when you see her just speaking normally, you would kind of go, okay, I mean, you seem like an intelligent, reasonable person, and you seem really normal. So it was a coached consultant thing. And whoever did that should be pushed down an elevator shaft. Which, by the way, is also, I'm channeling Hunter Thompson this morning. That's a Hunter Thompson line about Bob Squire. The great contrast that they had was, Biden yelling for an hour plus. And if she had just come on and say, hey, look, here's where I think he's wrong, and because I know you're unhappy with the direction of the country. I mean, that's all she had to do. I mean, all you had to do. I mean, there's the famous meme on, why can't you be normal? And again, you had this kind of incoherence going on for an hour and a half, and then voters go, why you can't be normal? And she comes on with this kind of scary, dinner theater performance, like she was doing fucking Hedda Gabler or something. I mean, it was crazy.
I heard somebody do an analogy, and it was like it wasn't like an established person. It was on TikTok, actually. Mm-hmm. It was a woman who said that she had grown up in very evangelical, conservative community. And she said that everyone else thought that the voice that Katie Britt was using was so odd. And she said for her, it was completely a normal voice, because that is how they talk. If you go to like a Bible summer camp, like, Jesus loves you so much. You should do the right thing. She's like, this is how they talk. This is the community. So
Yeah, I think
I
that's bullshit.
wonder.
I
Oh,
mean,
interesting. Okay, cool.
having
Yeah, yeah,
evangelicals, and the easy test is
yeah.
go on your radio and
Uh-huh.
listen on evangelical channels, because there's a million of them, especially on the AM,
Yeah.
and
Right.
not the ones talking to a yelling at a church, and obviously it's a pre-recorded thing, but the guys that have talk
Right.
shows, they
Yeah, yeah,
sound
yeah.
kind of normal. When they'll go into prayer, they'll say, "Now Jesus did it." They'll do that, but that's not what this was. I mean, this was something they coached her high and low, and they smile and that, and again, it was, and she was in her kitchen, um, that
Or an a
it's
kitchen. I don't know
if
those
you're in your kitchen
terms.
talking to somebody, you talk to them normal.
Right.
Apparently it
Right.
was, and
Yeah.
and they got, again, it was amateur hour. There was a picture of her and her husband and her kids, um, in the kitchen
Yeah.
with nothing in it, and it was a fake kitchen. But what you do when you film something, if you're filming in a kitchen, you take everything out because you don't want to knock it over and break it, and then you put it back in, redress it so it looks good on camera. But when you
Mm.
take that photo, that still photo that you're going to release, you make sure it's set and lit and you're ready to go, not in between it. I mean, again, it's just kind of amateur hour. I mean, it's just stuff that you just don't do.
Right.
And again, I ultimately, she's responsible for her own content, but I think it was consultant malpractice. But again,
Yeah. I mean, the last thing I think.
yeah,
Yeah, I think the only thing I would say about it is that I felt like it was overly performative because substantively, um, it's really hard to argue as many downsides about Biden as they are trying to. The biggest downside about Biden, I think, right now, you can say his biggest mistake is the border. But I think he's handled Ukraine soberly, like not too much, not too little. He's walking a fine line with Israel Hamas, not too much, not too little. You can disagree with him, but I don't think you can say he's made it worse. So if you're going to try to make it seem like he's causing the end of the American experiment,
mm-hmm.
it requires a lot of overacting to try to sell that. Whereas to your point, if she had just said, listen, we're not totally happy with the direction. There was some changes that were made under Biden for immigration, and that has had a serious effect on our country. We believe that we should do something different in Ukraine and Israel, and we believe that we're the people that can actually stop this, right? You make a case rather than try to make it seem like that person is, the son of Satan type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you do that, then you can be natural because it isn't such a bald-faced attempt to try to oversell it.
Yeah, I was struck when I was watching him after the fact that Biden doing the old man yells at cloud thing, and that her dinner
Yeah.
theater performance, the two most effective communicators in my political lifetime were Reagan and Obama. I can't think of a time any of them did yelling or that kind of overly emotional bullshit. I mean, they were successful because they talked in a cadence and in a tone where I'm an adult and I'm in charge, I'm responsible. I mean, not like yelling like, hey, I mean, but like they never yelled. If you look at their State of the Unions and you look at their stuff, you were like, okay, I can trust these people. These people are normal. I thought the interesting thing, I was commenting to some friends. I thought that I said I thought the interesting thing positively in Biden's speech, and whoever, again, State of the Unions are all cobbled together by 20 people, and it always feels like it. But where he said illegal, murdered by an illegal, and
then he apologized. I couldn't believe he apologized.
And And when I said that, somebody said, "What'd you think of that?" And I said, "I thought it was calculated and great, because if you're looking at the language that normal people use, that's the language they use. And it also says that you
100%.
understand that there's a problem with at the border.
Right.
Illegal people are coming in. You kind of go, okay." And I said, I think that was a really important pivot and a smart pivot, and it kind of, corners Trump a little bit. And then the next day, there was such an outcry from, the Polito-Roddy, that he walked it back, and he kind of, I apologize for calling a career criminal who raped and murdered a student, illegal. I mean, it wasn't some Abula who got run over by a tractor trailer trying to get a better life for her grandchildren. It was a fucking criminal who murdered and raped somebody. And the idea that he felt the need to apologize to that was like, I wanted to blow my brains out as a consultant. It's like,
Totally.
and I'm sure his people did too. I'm sure they were like, who the fuck talked you into this?
Right.
And again, it was damaging, and again, but it's like, it's really interesting to watch this thing play out, because every time you think Biden's going to get some momentum, he kind of draws it back in. I mean, there was the famous line about Rick Perry, who was governor of Texas. And it said, it's okay to step on your dick. It's not okay to jump up and down on it, and that's what both Britt and Biden did by a fairly, I mean, the bar is low for these things,
Right. Right.
And here's what I will say.
Have you seen?
Yeah. Okay.
No, please go ahead.
No, State of the Union's responses, they're hard. They're hard because you don't know when you're going to go on, because it's a live thing, and you're sitting in the studio knowing that, 50 million people are going to watch you, and it's always a little rushed. And they say, and you're sitting there and they go, okay, 10 seconds, and you go, what, and so it's normal to panic there, and she's not the first person. But again, it was the whole rehearsing. It was the whole theatrical thing that, nobody. Again, that's the angry wife, pissed off wife when you show up at 4:00 in the morning, drunk out of your mind, covered with stripper glitter. I mean, that's what that was, and and it's like, and nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to hear that voice,
right?
Because everybody's heard that.
Not even other pissed off wives.
No, right? Because you don't want to hear that voice, because you know what that voice is, and you kind of go like, "Oh my God, I have to apologize now. What's this going to,
Right?
Looks like I'm going to the flower."
Have you seen that? Have you seen that Biden hasn't gotten any bump in the polls after his? While some people say, and I do agree that he did he went too far. Again, I think it was overly performative because he has lost a step. So he had to overcorrect, and he overcorrected too far, right? So it felt very unnatural, or kind of, humans have a very good instinct for falsity, right? We can feel when something is juxtaposed, right? When something feels this is not normal, right? Yeah. So maybe it makes sense that he's had no bump in the polls, even though he showed more vitality. The vitality that he showed was insanity to a degree, maybe, or just. I will also say that I was struck by how much now we are doing prime minister's questions, where people in the rogues gallery are just yelling shit out. And that never used to happen until Joe What's-His-Face said, "You lied to Obama." And it was it just seemed like since then, this has just been Pandora's box. And every time now, it used to be you would either applaud or sit quietly.
Right.
And I don't like that version of it. I don't want to watch a bunch of fools yelling back and forth at each other.
No. I mean, it's it's stupid. I mean, what was God? I'm drawing a blank. I'm getting like Biden. Pelosi theatrically ripping up Trump's speech.
Yeah.
Yourself. I mean, all these people, go fuck yourself, and there should be, these people should be, castigated, just and for no other reason but for being an asshole. The
Right.
kind of my last thing so interesting point on the Biden thing. Biden gives the speech, and the press response was, "New Biden, magnificent, blah 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 blah, the greatest speech, blah 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 blah," and our phone poll show everybody loves it. The next day, or the 2 days after, another survey comes out and said not only did not everybody not love it, it was actually one of the lowest speeches on record and way under what Trump did. And part of the thing is that as an educated viewer, consumer, people need to be aware of. On the speech night, on State of the Union night, what do? They called people who watched it. And if you watch it, you're not a normal person. You're probably either you're a partisan one way or another. And that's the results you get. You get, 2 days later, what the rest of the world is, it kind of filtered down, and you saw excerpts and you saw read newspapers and you read shit online. That's really what you think about it. And so this kind of idea that these people who are commenting are so inside the bubble, they're, or up their own asses. By the way, one last thing on the Britt thing. Frank Capra, who was a director who probably most famous for It's a Wonderful Life, the Christmas movie, had a wonderful line about theatricality. And he said, "It's not drama when the actors cry. It's drama when the viewer cries." So
that's beautiful. It makes perfect sense.
Drama. Right. And if you think about great Obama speeches or great Reagan speeches, they made you kind of teary-eyed, but there was almost nothing emotional and certainly not theatrical about their speeches. I thought Obama's best speech was when he got the Nobel Peace Prize, and he talked about basically American power. And I think Reagan's most famous speech was probably at the anniversary of D-Day. And both speeches are beautifully written, and they just let the words and the power of the moment inform everything else. And they're moving in a way that yelling or crying or weeping or threatening, will never ever get. Because what do people like? What do people like in leaders? They like fucking leadership. And being weepy or yelling is not leadership. It is being confident.
We like that stoic approach. Very just stiff upper lip,
because who do you want in a panic? Would you want either of those people in a fucking panic or crisis? Holy fuck, no.
Right.
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 It was, and again, they do themselves disservices by doing the off-Broadway version of Joe Biden and the dinner theater version of Katie Britt, as opposed to just being normal. Oh my God.
That's funny. All right. Let's, I know we are up against the time. The 12th on Tuesday was Georgia, Mississippi, and Washington State. We had a couple contests end. We have people won a couple $1,000s of prizes have been paid out. Any surprises for you expected for March 19th? What's coming down the pipe? What do you see happening there?
I think the only thing to look at is if anything there makes any news. I will do a prediction that that the coverage of it will be like it didn't even happen.
Did you hear what I said?
No, I'm sorry.
I think I lost you at the end of what you said as well. But What's the what do you have what would you set the line at instead of asking you over under? What do you set the line at for Trump in Arizona next Tuesday on the 19th?
Ooh, 70.
And just so you know, for Georgia, we had in our contest we had the line set at 80.8%.
I think Trump's going to be lower. I think it's going to be 70.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And the only reason I say that is because Republicans are stuck right now with Carrie Lake.
Mm.
And they see her as a disaster and as a stone dead loser. And I think that they're going to take it out on Trump.
That's interesting because you weren't last week. That week we did not touch on as much as I wanted to. Kirsten Sinema. I didn't see that coming. I didn't think she was going to drop out. So did she? Do you think she did that to stop Carrie Lake? She wanted to, or do you think it was just what she said it was? She's tired of all the headache.
She dropped out because she can't win. It's very difficult to win as an independent, and so she couldn't win. And I think what was keeping her in the race is that she really hates Gallegos. They have an antipathy that goes back, decades. They just don't like each other. If she stayed in, she probably helps elect Lake. And I think that was part of the calculation, but I think it mostly was like she knew she couldn't win. And so why go through this fucking hellish thing? Let me take my campaign money, which is transferable, and go live to fight another day, and maybe I run for governor.
Okay.
Right. But again, and also I left on principle. I didn't lose.
Right,
I left on principle.
Right.
Right. Because once you lose, you can't say I did this for principle. You can't. No, it's like you fucking lost.
That's right.
I think she can say I left on principle, and here's my campaign fund. But I think the odds on favorite.
Smart.
Yeah, I think the odds on favorite is Gallegos. Because I think she has done too much damage to herself, and even this year. Just when you think that like she says a couple normal things for a week or two, and then she comes out with insanity. Right. Yeah.
Right. So what do you think in Arizona? You got 71.3% for Trump?
Yeah, I'll take that.
Yeah.
I think that's a
And what about
that's a long shot bet. By the way, I think that's a long shot bet. I mean that I don't think you could get a line on that. I think it's probably. I think Trump is probably going to get 80 something, but I think that there's going to be a blowback to Carrie Lake. I think this is sending the Arizona Republican Party a message, and not necessarily Donald Trump.
Interesting. Okay. All right. I will leave it there with you, Chris. We'll see what happens. So it's what is it? It's Arizona, Florida, Illinois, Kansas, and Ohio next week. So we'll see. We'll see how that pans out.
All right.
Well, Chris, that's another one. That's another one in the can. I'll see you in a week. That's it for another episode of Bully Pulpit. Thanks for joining.
I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
All right. Bye.